There was another, and was there just two making these recommendations who reviewed the imagery throughout this?
I know that Eli was on the committee, and I know that Gloria Liggett, who's a Tongva elder,
Okay.
was on the committee. I know that there was at least one native Chumash elder who wanted to be on the committee and would have been wonderful and was very knowledgeable and
Okay.
was not put on the committee even though she wrote and requested to be.
Okay. So the board heard the recommendations, but they made their decisions. They went into council and made their own decisions of what was going to happen to the imagery. Now, prior to that, because of the death threats and certain things that happened throughout this process, the death threats against Eli, you filed a complaint with the Office of Civil Rights.
Yes, I felt that the school authorities were simply not taking my son's safety seriously. And so last November, a year ago, I filed a complaint with the Office of Civil Rights, the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights. And they came back and decided they did have jurisdiction because Eli was engaged in a protected activity, protesting perceived discrimination.
Okay, so just recently, you have gotten a response from the Office of Civil Rights.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that, please?
Yes, actually, I'll read it right here. The entire report is 12 pages long, but here is the meat of it for the family.
Okay.
The Office of Civil Rights has several concerns. Our investigation showed that except for the initial comments of the superintendent after the student walkout, the district or school did not communicate a message to the school community that retaliating against students who protest what they see as discrimination is not tolerated, that the threats were inappropriate and unacceptable conduct, and that any student found responsible for such action in the future would be severely sanctioned. The district also did not communicate and converse with the student and parent to determine if its actions had been adequate enough to provide the student with a sense of being safe and in a non-hostile environment. It did not discuss with the student and his family whether they preferred to keep the incidents confidential or whether they would have liked the school to take more public action. In summary, the Office of Civil Rights was concerned that the events were not viewed in the context of what was needed to address the effects on the student or whether institutional-wide steps might be necessary to address the school environment and prevent any reoccurrence of harassment of the student. The Office of Civil Rights also acknowledged that the district disagrees with these concerns.
Okay. Now, the Office of Civil Rights also handed down some decisions that they felt that needed to be made, or needed, like policies, for instance, within the school district. There was 3 things that they said needed to be done.
Mm-hmm.
Can you comment on those?
Yes, I'm just going to read the titles of them.
Okay.
They said that they were going to oversee this, cite guidance for administrators and staff, dealing with prohibiting harassment and retaliation against students who have engaged in an activity to assert or protect the rights of individuals to be free from discrimination based on race, ethnicity, sex, or disability in district programs or activities, and there are other things as well. And they're going to provide training and notice to the school community.
Okay, and I believe they also have to post their policy to the public on their school website.
Yes.
I think that's part of that.
Yes.
Now, what is your response to this from their decision?
Well, I think it's a good decision. I feel like in this case, they were very narrowly defining the school environment. They were dealing with the school environment, and not only a school is supposed to provide, as we spoke of before in the beginning, a non-hostile environment for students.
Yes.
It's supposed to provide a positive environment for students, and I really think the OCR saw that the district was not doing that it was basically, not really dealing with the bigger issue,
right,
of intolerance and allowance of harassment. I think they were kind of turning a blind eye to that, or not doing as much as they should to encourage the free expression of ideas and critical thinking.
Exactly, and I believe that Carpinteria, like most schools, has a no-tolerance policy, which clearly was not followed.
Exactly.
So can you comment on Eli's response to this, if he has something that he would have liked to say tonight?
Well, Eli is pleased too, but as he spoke of many times, he's continuing to fight for understanding, continuing to fight for a better educational environment. At this point, he no longer attends Carpinteria High School, but the struggle still goes on.
Right.
And he would like to go beyond this and on to the actual realization of the end of this kind of stereotyping and miseducation.
Yeah, and I think that what the public needs to know, especially the carpentry community, is that this is not an issue just relating to Carpinteria. This is a national issue. Mm-hmm. People are coming forward. There's a lot of organizations. Throughout this complaint, there was a coalition that was formed as an outcome to this complaint, which was a coalition CARE, which was the Coalition Against Racism in Education. So there's a lot of support out there, and this is a national issue. Schools have, and organizations have been successful in getting the mascots out of the schools and out of sports teams. Joining us in the studio is Amrita Salm. She is a former school board member with the Carpinteria School District. Welcome.
Thank you.
So you got to hear a little bit about, what Charisse Cordero had said about the complaint with Eli Cordero.
Right.
And you were on the school board when the original complaint was brought forward by Eli Cordero. Can you explain what your reaction to that original complaint was?
Okay.
Right.
So Eli made an eloquent presentation that night in March. He presented the packet, which Charisse showed you. And then I spent the next 6 weeks studying the issue. And it really seemed so clear-cut to me. I mean, after researching all of it, not just the Commission on Civil Rights and what every professional organization had said and what other universities had done and what other school districts had done and the psychology behind it and the incidence of the highest suicide rate among Native Americans and there were so many factors. I couldn't really see what the purpose of keeping the imagery was, because for the benefit of the children and for the community, there was no choice, in my opinion. That was, the reaction was, well, naturally, that we would remove the imagery.
Right. And that was the original decision that was made collectively by the board.
Correct. On April 22nd, which was 6 weeks later.
Okay.
We had a meeting. There was not a huge crowd that night. There were people there, but not a lot of people there. As many people as there were later. And the next day there was the protest by the students, and apparently a community member came forward to the superintendent and said that they had to bring this before the board again. They needed to vote on it again. So April 22nd, when we actually voted on it, we had a whole packet that we received from the school district office, from the superintendent, and in my opinion it was very pro-removal of the imagery. The following day there was a protest of the students, which I believe was incited by the parents, former alumni of the school.
Football team?
Yes, right.
Okay. And we know the mentality of, yes.
Right, and it is a jock community,
yes.
And athletics are a major function of the high school, and creative interests and other things are minimalized. I don't think any of us who were on the board, including the two who voted to keep the imagery, would have ever thought that there would have been the reaction that there was in the community. Not just the next day with the student walkout, which was, in my opinion, not such a big issue, but that there were other members of the community who were being really angry about this. And there were lots of articles in both our local paper as well as in other newspapers. There were, so I heard, for instance, that when there were editorials being written in other papers, for instance, the Daily Sun.